we go. Hi there. I am the CRM Ninja, and I'm really honored that on today's episode of the Oops Factor, I'm joined by the one, the only, Gus Gonzalez. Welcome to the show, Gus.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Very jealous of that awesome animation that you have at the beginning, by the way. Pretty awesome. I have nothing like that. I don't have, there's nothing cool about a microphone. I can't animate that, but at least you have the bike and the ninja going. So that's awesome.
Well, when I was started with what I would do as a brand, I thought I love motorbikes. I love ninjas. And I ride a ninja motorbike incidentally. So I thought, let's do something around there. So yeah, I just put it together and I got somebody on Fiverr, got a logo and got it together. I actually turned up for a UG a year ago here in London, dressed as a ninja, but without the weaponry.
Ah, the weaponry is the best thing about being a ninja.
The weapon was, I mean, obviously I had weaponry hidden on me, but
Of course.
but being
Like a
visible.
good ninja.
Like a good ninja, always prepared. And I walked into the UG and people were like, wow, there's somebody dressed as a ninja. So it was fun. But this isn't about me. This is talk about you. And I have motorbikes as a hobby. You have scuba diving, hence my background. How did you get into it?
So a couple of years ago, me and my wife decided to go to Iceland for just a week vacation. There was an airline that obviously went out of business that offered round trip flights to Iceland from the US for $99 each way, which is
Wow.
which is cheaper than going anywhere within the US. So me and my wife said, all right, let's just take him up on it and go to Iceland. And we went. And when I was researching things to do in Iceland or top 10 things to do in Iceland, you know, I like the top 10 lists.
We know you have a slight affinity for top 10 lists.
Number one on the list was scuba diving. So there's a place in Iceland, a crevice that separates the tectonic plates between the Americas and the Eurasian tectonic plates, and they come together within 5 feet or 1.5 meters. And
Wow.
that space, that void between the two tectonic plates, is filled with the clearest water on Earth to dive. So
Wow.
you can dive and put your hands on the two continents at the same time, which is really cool. So it's number one. People, fly to Iceland just to do that dive. And so I said I need to learn how to dive, and I learned how to dive, and I did the dive, and it was awesome. And just because I wanted to do that one thing, the number one thing to do in Iceland, I ended up falling in love with the sport. I'm now a dive instructor. I'm a cave diver,
Wow.
technical diver, trimix diver. I dive rebreathers. So I've been, full on. I really cannot wait to go back diving. Every time I'm not diving, I'm thinking about diving. Is insane. It's now a full-time obsession, I would say.
I like the way you say obsession. Most people would say hobby, but obsession is true. There are some sports you get into it, you're absolutely hooked on it. I started learning to scuba some years back and had an accident unrelated to the scuba diving, but so that stopped it at the time. But definitely. So when you were down there between the tectonic plates, do you like put your hands on each side and do like a Superman thing, like I'm pushing them apart?
Kind of. You do get a picture. Obviously, the obligatory, hand on each continent picture. But the coolest part about that dive, for those of you watching who are divers, is not really the fact that you get to touch two continents. Like, that's cool, but the fact that the water is so clear. It's like diving on
Yeah.
invisible water. There's no matter on it. There's no silt. There's nothing floating on it. It's completely invisible. So
Wow.
it's just, it feels weird. There's unlimited visibility. So like 1 mile visibility. There's no nonstop
It's
visibility.
crazy.
So yeah. So when you look down, and in some places it can get pretty deep, like 20, 30 meters deep, you can see all the way to the bottom and nothing between you and the bottom. It's like being suspended in the air. So that by far is the coolest part about that dive.
That must be really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
It's pretty
I've been to
awesome.
Iceland. I haven't done that bit. I have been to the Blue Lagoon.
Blue
It's
Lagoon
great
is
to be.
cool. I think that was number two on the list. So for sure we went there. But yeah, it's interesting. Again, is some people say, why would you go diving in Iceland where it's like 1 degree over freezing in the water? That is true. The water is super cold, and some people have it at the top of their bucket list. Is one of
Yeah.
those things. That, yeah, it depends on the person.
So, I mean, listeners listening to this will be, if you want to really get some, good one-on-one time with Gus, take him out scuba diving because
For
you've got to go on
sure.
a dive boat and you've got to get in and stuff, quality time there.
100%. And those who took, CRM classes with me and know how passionate I am about CRM and, how much that I enjoy teaching, you have no idea how much I enjoy teaching scuba. So if you ever want to learn, I'm always open for that as well.
Tell me you have a power app that you've built for scuba.
No, man, no. They're not connected. CRM and scuba diving are completely separate worlds. Equally passionate about both, though.
Got it. Yes, we know. So from scuba diving to the oops factor, what stories do you have to share with us?
I mean, there's so many different projects where things didn't go according to plan. In some cases, it went way better than planned. When I'm thinking that things are gonna work one way, they end up working much better than what I envisioned. But there are a couple of times where things didn't work out as good as I expected or I hoped.
Okay.
And when I think about a common thread among those projects that didn't work out as expected, the one thing that I'm always falling back into it is on the times that I step away from my methodology, or
Ah,
stepping away from the way I like to work. I've always said that, there are customers and partners out there, that are perfect fits and some that are not, where we can be the absolute best partner, or that I can be the absolute best solution architect for one customer. I can be the worst nightmare for another customer, because it's depending on the way you like to work. So when I think about the projects for me that I kind of wish I could go back and either not do or do differently, I think about those projects where I started working with a customer knowing that it wasn't a fit 100%, but hoping for the best that it will become a fit. And then
okay.
when it didn't work out. I have started a ton of projects where I had reservations or concerns that I'm like, maybe this is not a good fit. And then a couple of weeks after starting the project, it becomes a fit and the projects go great. That happens a lot.
Right.
But there are some other ones that wasn't the case.
So is it sort of a gut feel? Is there anything when you're going into it, you start thinking right at the beginning, this may not be a good fit, or I'm really dreading because I don't think this is a good fit, but I'm going to try anyway. So what are sort of any triggers or flags? How do you sort of start that? How does that come into your mind rather than this is an awesome opportunity, we're going to bond instantly?
Yeah. So when you work with customers, there's really kind of three types of customers. One is the customer that kind of respects your opinion, values your experience, and wants to leverage all of that for to their advantage. Like, look, we know our business, but dynamics and all these other business applications better than us. So
Yeah.
let's work together to find the best solution. Those are by far my favorite customers and my favorite projects to work with. And then you have customers who maybe have worked with other partners in the past, or maybe they have experiences from other projects where maybe they trusted a consultant or a partner and it didn't work great and they have reservations. So when I go into a relationship like that and they trust me to start with, even though they've been burned in the past, I'm really hopeful that that's going to work out, because I'm like, look, I've done this a bunch of times. I've done over 200 implementations. I
Wow.
feel that when we start working together, you're really going to see the value and you're going to be cool. And in most cases, that's exactly how it works. They're hesitant to start and then they become lifelong customers and it
Okay.
works out.
Yeah,
And then you
that's
have,
good, especially if you can start with there's some trust there. They're not just
of
handing you
course,
the key to the kingdom. They're saying, look, we've had some other partners, it may not have gone well, but we know your experience, and it's hundreds of projects delivered successfully, and you can sort of see that bond there at the beginning, and it's just about strengthening that bond.
yeah, or starts with, you having to explain or me having to explain why I recommend certain things. So for example, I'll
Right.
say something like, I think we should do this with Power BI, or I think we should, do this kind of security implementation or use flow instead of workflows or whatever. And the customer, instead of saying, okay, let's do it without, asking why, some customers will start by saying, but why are you recommending that? And then once I explain and they can see that I have their best interest in mind,
Yeah.
then at some point they just stop asking. It's sort of like, yeah, whatever you say goes. Let's do it. But then there are some scenarios where customers either again have been burned in the past or whatever it is, and they start working with you, and that never goes away. In some cases, some customers, they'll say, look, we know our environment. I've been an owner of this CRM solution for 8 years, and whatever I say goes. And in some of those cases, it ends up being really bad for the customer, or the projects fail or whatever. And the tough part about it is, as a solution architect, I have to take ownership And
Yeah.
if I recommended something and the customer overruled it and the project didn't work out, it's still my failure as a solution architect. So, those are still counted, even though there's really not a whole lot I could do about it.
Okay. So what would your advice be to somebody who could be very experienced or could be very junior starting off on role? They're at a client and the client is pushing back and saying, I know my business inside out. I own it. I'm going to tell you how we need to do it. How would you advise people to handle those sort of situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are partners out there that thrive on customers like that. By the way, I mean, I don't think there's a shortage of companies. They'll say whatever you say, I'll do it. I'll charge you X amount an
Yeah.
hour. I'm not gonna question what you're asking. I'm gonna do it regardless. And when it fails, yeah, I'm gonna charge you to fix it. And by the way, you're gonna tell me how to fix it, so I'm gonna do that, and it's gonna fail again. So there's tons of partners like that, and that's why I said I think there are really good fits between customers and partners out there,
Yeah.
regardless of what kind of customer you are, because there's always a partner that will be a good fit to do whatever you ask for, even if what you're asking for is not the right thing.
Okay.
But the way I approach it is, I always, I'm not going in thinking that I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm the one that knows the most. Like I'm pretty humble about the fact that I don't know all of dynamics. I'm not an expert in every single thing you can do. I'm clearly not an expert on your business and your industry more than you, that I actually do this for a living. So I go in with an open mind, and
Okay.
I listen, but I do question. If you're telling me that that you think that we should use flow for this, for example, and what I'm looking at is something that needs to happen in real time, let's just say, then I'm going to
Yes.
ask you, like, okay, so I hear from you that what you're asking needs to happen in real time. Flow doesn't work in real time. So, can you explain to me why do you think flow is the right way? And in some cases, they either can show me they're right in their assumption, or they can go back and say, you know what, you're right. This needs to happen in real time. How would you do it? Right.
And it's
So
always nice when that happens because then they're acknowledging that you actually know what you're talking about, of course.
absolutely. Absolutely. Or I ask, I say something like, I like the flow route, but what would it happen if we use a plugin, for example, in this case? What are the advantages or disadvantages of it? And maybe at the end of that conversation, we still end up doing flow, but at least my job is to bring in, here are all of the options that we have. What's the best one? And maybe the one you recommended is the best. Maybe the one I recommended is best. But again, it's just a tough situations where you work with customers that, try to override
Yeah.
what you have
So always really to
determined is the best solution.
listen to the customer and what they're proposing, and if you may
Yeah,
be thinking something, you know, question them obviously politely and diplomatically as necessary, and come up with alternative solutions and do it. It may not go your way in inverted commas at the end of the day, but at least you're understanding and hopefully you're working on that bond with a customer who could be very against you and your ways of working in the first instance.
yeah, the way I think about projects like that, though, that again I've done several, is that when it comes to dynamics, you either win or you learn, right, from these projects. I don't necessarily see it as a total failure. One
I like the
project
way
that,
you put that. You should get a
yeah,
t-shirt with that
you
on.
either win or you learn. Yeah. Because I remember years and years ago when I was a brand new solution architect, one of the projects that I started working with a customer that said they didn't want to be involved in the weekly, scrum sessions, or, we call them, iterations.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to be involved with that. They spent a bunch of time. I think they worked with another partner to come up with a document, like a functional requirements document or whatever. Look,
Yeah.
we've met about this for months. We decided the list is the list. Just go and do it. Right. And against my better judgment, I decided to say, okay, you want me to implement what's in the document, I'm going to implement what's in the document. I did exactly what it was. And then when it came at the end of the project, when it came to demo it, things were not really working out, right? Users were
Okay.
complaining that this was just another system IT wanted them to use. There was no value for them, and it wasn't as friendly as possible. The performance wasn't great. But I implemented exactly what they said. But at the end of the day, they did not adopt the solution. So what that taught me was, no matter what happens in every project, you need to have the stakeholders involved, the users involved,
Yes.
the champions involved, no matter what, and never break that rule. But unfortunately, again, a lot of these rules you have to learn the hard way, and those are the
That's
projects that
true.
are the oops factor.
Indeed, indeed. You know, we learn valuable lessons as you turn around and say you win, or it's a learning thing. And that's really the point of the show. You know, people bring up their experiences so that we can learn as well from the things that others have done as a parent, we don't want our kids to go through the same mistakes that we have. We try and tell them. I mean, invariably they go and they do the same thing, so they learn themselves as well. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, definitely everything in life is a learning situation. One of my personal statements that I like is that if a day doesn't go by without me learning at least one thing, it's sort of a wasted day. I should be looking to learn at least one new thing every day and adapt and make myself better. Continual change, and we should all be
Yeah.
doing that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the most awkward, because I know that people watch these shows to listen to train wrecks. The most awkward one that happened to me once was the first time I ever went overseas on a job assignment. I went to Europe as a newly hired technical lead for a partner. This was a long time ago, before I was even a solution architect. And we went to visit like our biggest customer in that country. And I thought it was just a visit to talk to them about their implementation. It was CRM4, on premise back in the day. And,
You're bringing
you know,
tears of nostalgia to my
right.
eyes.
So I just wanted to talk to them about how it was going and how the server was performing and all of that. I was a technical guy. I wasn't a solution architect guy back then. So my job was to make sure the server was working and it was interconnecting with the other systems and it was
Yeah.
working properly. And I was bombarded, by the team at the customer side. I was in Netherlands, and I was bombarded by all these problems they've been having with the system and with the solution. There were more solution architecture problems, but they were kind of like, oh, you're here. So, why does this not work? Why, when I click on this button, it doesn't pop up? Why? They just went through a huge list. And my answer was always, I don't know. I'm going to look into that for you. So imagine being there like hostage for like 3 to 4 hours, having to answer for functionality that I've never seen before. I was a newly hired,
Yep.
functional or technical lead for this company.
You were
And
thrown in the thick of things, into the lion's den.
it was rough, but I love Netherlands, so I stuck with the job, and I ended up going to Netherlands a few more times, and we ended up making the customer happy in the long run, so that worked out.
It's good. No, wonderful. Well, Gus, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing those thoughts. Viewers, we hope that you've learned some valuable lessons from it. It's, as other people who have come on the show have said, it's about also how you engage with it. Be careful with your language. Feel free to check out the rest of the Oops Factor playlist, subscribe to the channel, take a look at the blog. And if you fancy coming on the show to share your own Oops Factor story alongside Gus and the others who have been on, hit the link in the description, fill in your details, and I'll drop you a line. Have a great day.